Welcome to this video, where we will discuss a process guide to the Peace Corps Small Grants Program. This will be important as it's the second video of this series. At the end of this learning experience, we are anticipating that you will be able to list the small grant programs available at POST, describe the process, criteria, and requirements for grant applications and implementations in Peace Corps Guatemala. Let's review some questions to ask before you start planning a grant. Although we recognize that outside funding at times can help, sometimes introducing non-local funding into a community can do more harm than good. Volunteers and community members should then decide if the grant is the appropriate way for their particular context. For this analysis, let's think about the following questions. How was the need for the project discovered? This is important to collect information and background data to know if there is a diagnostic that actually leads to this project or where did the idea come from. The tools from Ciclo Participativo can be helpful in this sense. Have all local resources been tapped? Perhaps with the volunteers' assistance, the community could identify additional local funding sources, and this can help not only the local economy, but self-resilience can be strengthened within the community. Will an outside grant promote dependency? This is definitely linked to sustainability issues. Let's ask ourselves if the community has a history of using outside assistance and how the volunteer can help strengthen the assets that are already there and establish different local ties, also reducing the community's dependence to external funding to promote sustainability. The following question asks, will a volunteer's effectiveness be compromised if their role is identified with outside material or financial resources? A volunteer can help reduce dependency as he keeps or she keeps her facilitator role in perspective. A volunteer should carefully weigh the value of the grant against the expectations that it might create within the community. Will you have enough time to complete the project 3 months prior to COS? This is the mark that we want to set. Projects take time, and it's our responsibility to assess if we have enough time before this 3-month mark. Before we move forward, let's review some big criteria related to the Small Grants Program at Peace Corps. Volunteers are only allowed to accept funds through the Peace Corps Small Grants Program. This is the only way that you can receive, accept, and manage funds, because this program provides small amounts of resources to volunteers to implement community-identified projects. As we mentioned in the previous video, it is based on the participatory analysis of community assets and needs consistent with the Peace Corps approach to development. Each type of grants and funding source has different requirements, and we have 2 available options in the Peace Corps here in Guatemala, so let's check each one. Peace Corps Guatemala has 2 available funding sources. The first is the Small Project Assistance, or SPA program, and the second one is Peace Corps Partnership Program, PCPP. We will check both of them more in detail in the following slides. The Small Project Assistant, or SPA program, is a relationship established with the United States Agency for International Development, USAID. This funding is actually aligned to the USAID priorities here in the country. Therefore, small grant projects should also be aligned with these priorities, called program areas, and report on specific indicators. This means that when you're requesting a SPA fund, you will need to make sure that the project is aligned with one of the program elements. The program elements available are agricultural sector capacity, education system, cross-cutting health system strengthening or family reproductive health, cross-cutting health system strengthening related to MCH, and program design and learning. The other option available for our post is the Peace Corps Partnership Program, or PCPP. This is funded by interested parties via Peace Corps Washington, such as family, friends, organizations, foundations, RPCBs, schools, etc. The PCPP program connects small, community-initiated projects with the private sector donations. And fundraising happens through the Peace Corps Global website where potential donors make direct connections. The volunteer can select a list of potential donors and they will be contacted by Peace Corps Washington. It's important to remember that volunteers are not allowed to receive funding from family, friends, or any other organization unless it goes through the PCPP. Now that we are aware that we have two funding options available, one from USAID and the other one from private donations, let's check the requirements for the Small Grants Program, which apply to both. First, there is a need to have the community initiate and direct the project. This is not something that should come up from a PCB identified need, but has to happen after a conversation with the community to initiate and lead. It should be co-developed to support community assets and needs, recognizing that the community already has assets and they should be able to support these needs. It promotes sustainability and capacity building. These are our two main criteria discussed previously. It should include indicators of success aligned to the type of program and project that you are thinking of implementing. It should be submitted no earlier than 6 months after the PCBs have started service. So that means that for CON 16, we are in time. And as mentioned before, it should be scheduled to be completed at least 3 months before the closing of service. The amounts should range from $500 to $10,000, which is the maximum. And finally, please remember that there is a commitment of 25% minimum of community contribution. Let's review the grant-related roles in Peace Corps Guatemala. First of all, the program manager, with support from the program team, is the primary technical point of contact for volunteers to consult on the planning, implementation, and closeout of small grants at post. Then, the Small Grants Coordinator, who coordinates timely and proper technical and financial reporting in BRG. It's important to know that the Director of Programming and Training works with post staff to ensure that the grants complement the post programming priorities and that they meet the local context. The Director of Management and Operation with the financial team also have a task of obligating the funds and reviewing the financial management and administrative guidelines for compliance. And finally, the Country Director, who provides oversight and direction and accountability for the in-country administration of the projects. Let's review the process of grant approval together. There are 12 minimum steps here in Peace Corps Guatemala and different levels of approval that need to happen. As you can see, in step number 1, the community and the PCB identify a project opportunity. In step 2, the PCB works with the community to dream the project to leverage the opportunity. In this second step, it's important that local sources of funding are considered first. If there are no available local sources of funding, then in step number 3, the volunteer can discuss with the PM to apply for a small grant program. In step 4, when the conversation is started with the PM and he or she approves, the PCB needs to take grant-related modules in Learning Space. For example, the grant module in BRG Foundations and this set of videos. Finally, in step number 5, the PCB and the community can enter and submit the grant application in BRG with a notification to the project manager. In step number 6, the PM reviews the proposal and gives feedback until the proposal is sound and complete. In step 7, we include additional Peace Corps staff to review and give feedback, which leads to step number 8, where the PM notifies the PCB of approval And in step number 9, MRES, or Small Grant Coordinator, comes in to monitor the BRG submission with HQ. Step number 10, the PM notifies approval and monitors the implementation through continuous check-ins with the PCB, giving technical guidance all the steps of the way. Finally, in step number 11, the community and the PCB implement the grant and consider all the technical and administrative process up to the closing of the grant. And in step 12, the closing of the grant is where we evaluate and celebrate the process. It's important for us to remind you that we expect that the review process of approval taking around 6 to 8 weeks for our post, which will depend both on staff and also on the PCB. In this next slide, we'll check information related to how the Small Grants Program aligns to BRG. The BRG is the universal platform for applying, managing, and reporting grant activities. It is also the database in which Peace Corps staff monitors the volunteer activities and grant applications. At this time, you must have completed most of the BRG Foundation modules. This is even before early IST. But once you start planning a small grants project, you will need to complete the additional module related to grants of this course. Next, I want to share another available opportunity for you and the community, and it's called DPP. Some of you might have heard about this, but it's the Diseñando Proyectos Participativos, which is a blended learning course for both volunteers and work partners. The objective is to develop a project proposal that is participatory and inclusive. Each community team will use Ciclo Participativo tools and facilitate group meetings to develop a project proposal, which includes a goal, objectives, action plan, budget, and M&E plan. The project proposal that comes out of the DPP can serve as a base for a small grant or for another funding opportunity. Yet it's important to know that just because you participated in the DPP, it doesn't guarantee that a small project from small grants will be given. So please think of it as an additional resource and capacity building opportunity. Finally, to close this video, let's review some tips and best practices. First, look for local funding opportunities as a first step. External funding is not necessarily the best option for all community projects. Consider the project timeframe and your own service journey. It's important to have enough time to complete the project implementation and close out with professionalism. Next, monitoring, adapting, and reporting is important to remain accountable. Accountability towards the community and other stakeholders is very important in all the steps of the project. Time will be needed to translate documents. This is important because you will be planning the project with the community in Spanish, but you will be entering the information in BRG in English. To keep accountable and transparent, as we were mentioning before, it's important to consider that there might be time needed to translate documents. Create a system to keep the receipts organized. This is something that we will check in the video on financial management, but it's important that since the beginning of the project, you use time to keep these receipts organized and not at the time of finishing the implementation. We encourage you to take photos during the whole process. This will allow you to have a gallery from the beginning to the closing of the small grant. And finally, recognize and share successes, but also lessons learned. One of the things that could be done better, it will be useful for both PCBs, communities, and also the Peace Corps. So please remember to share your successes, but also your lessons learned. Finally, additional resources will be available to support you in this process, and feel free to contact us or share any comments or questions that may come in. The Small Grants Program is a very good opportunity for you to embark in the participatory project design, and we are here to support you.